Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and it is such a thrill to be back with you today. And I will tell you that a few weeks back I was flattered, to be blunt with you, that I received a couple of telephone inquiries and a couple of emails asking for whom I would be supporting in the upcoming Louisiana State Treasurer's race. And it's very flattering to me to know, and then one individual who called me, who's a dear friend, said, Robert, I know you research these things, so I'm going to go on what you would say. And I consider that to be an extreme compliment. And I want to make one thing clear. The blog that I run, Sound Off Louisiana, I do not accept, nor will I ever accept, any form of paid advertising, period. I also do not accept and will never accept contributions from my viewers. I want to maintain complete and total independence. I feel that's very important to me. And so what you will hear from me is my own observations based on candidates in a race. I realize that other outlets out there do have perhaps somewhat of a conflict in that they may receive contributions, and that's, I mean, we all have to survive. We all have to make a living, and that's understandable. But I will say that it can oftentimes put you in a precarious position with regard to the objectivity of your assessments. I don't receive one dime from any candidate running for any political office, and I will never accept one dime. I do participate in campaigns. I have contributed to campaigns of people whom I support and believe would be good leaders for our state government. Now, having said that, I'm just going to be blunt with you. We have one candidate for the Louisiana Treasurer's race that troubles me, and troubles me gravely, and that would be Republican Neil Reiser. Now, many of you may remember, but many of you may not be aware of the fact that 3 years ago there was a tremendous upheaval with regard to what is commonly referred to as the Edmondson Amendment. It was an amendment that was snuck into a bill that was going before a conference committee. These things happen in the very last seconds of a legislative session, and as U.S. Senator John Kennedy has said, they are extremely dangerous because this is where things get slipped in and nobody's able to follow it because they meet in private. It's behind closed doors, and this was one such instance. What happened is there was an amendment put into a bill that had nothing to do with retirement of any state employees, and that amendment would have did permit, because it passed, it became a law. Colonel Mike Edmondson, who, if you go back to my JBE fraud website, I warned Governor Edwards this thing was going to bite him in the ass from reappointing Mike Edmondson, and I will take no great joy in saying my prediction came true, but it would have granted him did grant him a $55,000 a year increase in his pension. We're going to give you the link. I formed a website to track all of this. It's called lspripoff.com. We'll give you that link where you can follow the entirety of the thing, but I'm going to draw your attention for just a moment, and we'll provide that as a separate link to some commentary that I put out on September the 3rd, 2014. So we're basically on the 3-year anniversary of this material going out. And the reason I want to draw your attention to it is because I believe it represents exactly what is wrong in the state of Louisiana and why we have roads and bridges that are in desperate need. Nobody's going to argue we don't need a new bridge in Baton Rouge. I mean, common sense, just go out there and look at the traffic that you encounter at certain times of the day and how frustrating it is. But as Americans for Prosperity has said in the recent attempted tax of 17 cents a gallon, which was resoundingly defeated, the money exists already, and I'm here to tell you it does. And if you look at, by the way, I can't take credit for these findings. the findings, and I'll give the link to his website or to his blog where he revealed these things. It belongs to a gentleman named Tom Aswell. Tom and I differ pretty significantly on our political beliefs, but he is very steadfast about uncovering governmental corruption and cronyism, and despite our difference, I'm much more conservative than he is. I'll just cut straight to the chase. I will always work with him. I will assist him in any way he needs me to assist him in revealing this kind of corruption and cronyism, and he has done likewise with me. So despite our philosophical differences, we work well together with regard, but that's the whole reason I have a separate blog, is because my beliefs do differ from his pretty significantly, particularly with regard to fiscal policies. We do not need more taxes. The money is there. And no one did a better job of outlining that than Mr. Aswell. And I would draw your attention, you will see the highlighted items. I would draw your attention to the third and fourth, let me make sure I counted that right. No, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3. Fourth and fifth items from the bottom. When Mr. Aswell draws out the fact that Diana Alario, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, that would be John Alario's daughter-in-law. For John Alario, for those who may not be familiar, is the president of the Senate, who's been in the legislature since 1972 and literally rules that whole operation. There is no more person any more powerful in the state of Louisiana than John Alario, and that includes the governor. And power can oftentimes be a very bad thing, and I think in this instance that it is. You will see that Diane Alario, John Alario's daughter-in-law, was hired for state police at a $56,300 a year salary to, quote, supervise LSP personnel, and she's doing so from her home, okay? Now, how you're going to supervise Baton Rouge employees from your home in West Wego is beyond me, but you see the reality, $56,300 a year for doing such, assuming that it is being done. Then we have John Alario, his son, that's on the next line item, being appointed to the DPS payroll at $95,000 a year as the director of the DPS Liquefied Petroleum Gas Commission. And then if you skip on down to the very last entry, we have Kathleen Seal. I will click on her to bring up her website. Here is her website. Now this young lady managed to procure a $437,000 consulting contract with DPS, Department of Public Safety, and $12,900 and 21 flights coming back and forth to provide this training. What I'm getting at, when John Kay, he is the regional director for Americans for Prosperity, when he made the statement the money is in the budget for us to have had a new Mississippi River Bridge, he meant what he said. But it's this kind of Alario-related pig slop and lard and waste is the reason we don't have that bridge. And you don't need another 17 cents increase in your gasoline tax to fund the raise. Now, why I am so, as I told you, getting back to the Edmondson Amendment, an amendment has to have an author, okay? There were 6 members of this conference committee, and when Tom Aswell exposed the Edmondson Amendment, and he is responsible for it, and I salute him on that. It's one of the reasons I have tremendous respect for him as an investigative journalist, notwithstanding our political differences. Everybody wanted to run from this. Nobody wanted to claim authorship of it. Well, as the late C.B. Fergusson said, I guess we'll have to call this the bastard amendment because no one wants to claim it as the father. Well, not only did Senator Reiser not claim it, he first denied that he ever authored it, and then later, when enormous pressure got put on, most notably by Lee Zurich of Fox 8, the one who recently revealed the Calvin Braxton situation with the State Police Commission, Senator Reiser had no other choice but to finally fess up and to say, yeah, I authored the amendment, okay? Well, first of all, you ought to have had enough sense to know this thing was going to be unconstitutional on your own. Instead, a law gets passed, and then we have to rely upon Senator Dan Claytor to literally file a lawsuit as an individual citizen to undo the mess that Senator Reiser created in agreeing to author this amendment. But he was clearly doing it to facilitate the kind of lard and waste that is so prevalent at state police. $600 million of our taxpayer funds have been raided from the Transportation Trust Fund into state police to fund this kind of lard and abuse. And what troubles me even more than Senator Reiser's activities there is his present day activities. We're going to give you a link for this. I showed you all of that Alario pig slop, the little lard. It's just pure fat, okay? Well, Senator Reiser recently held a fundraiser, and I'm going to give you a direct link for the flyer for the fundraiser. And as you will see, I'm putting it right in front of the camera. I want to make sure you get a good view of it. You'll see right here who is the featured gentleman at, I'm sorry, right here, right up here at the top. He's going to take precedence because even though the candidate is below, here's the gentleman who will be hosting or heading or speaking or the main featured speaker at this fundraiser. Who is it? Senate President John Alario. So, and let me just say this, John Alario is no more Republican than I am Donald Trump, okay? He may have changed the card the same way Buddy Caldwell did. Trust me, his allegiance is still with long-term Democratic associations. And what we have here is a fundraiser held on August the 29th of this year. And in order to be at this fundraiser, well, all you've got to do is step up to the plate. I'm putting it very close to the camera, and fork over $1,000. And oh, by the way, if you can raise $5,000, you'll be a member of Top Riser. How about that, folks? How many of you will have the ability to provide the $5,000 to be a member of Top Riser? Not me. So my point is, I don't think you're appealing to the average everyday taxpayer with this sort of a lucrative flyer. Now, beyond that, if you look at Senator Reiser's most recent campaign finance disclosure, and we'll provide you the link for it. We'll scan this page and give you a link for it. You'll see right there in the bottom, it's Neil Reiser's campaign finance disclosure. We're going to give you the entire link for his campaign finance disclosure. But I found page 20 out of the 38-page filing to be quite interesting. This was a recent, you have to list your expenditures when you engage in campaign activities, and here's one that's very interesting. This is Senator Neil Reiser's campaign on August the 24th of 2017. So about, I don't know, two and a half weeks ago, they made a $10,000 contribution. $10,000 to an entity called New Orleans East Leadership PAC. New Orleans East Leadership PAC. That is an entity which is ran by a gentleman named Dwight Jarrett, and we'll give you a little material about Mr. Jarrett. He works for New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu. I don't know if you're real thrilled with Mayor Landrieu. I'm not. I'm just going to be blunt with you. And I feel like a vast majority of conservatives across this state are not very happy with Mitch Landrieu. Yet we see that a so-called conservative in the form of Neil Reiser is able to write a check for $10,000 to an entity by a gentleman who works for Mitch Landrieu and who's had a few little problems of his own in the past, in that it's about 12 or 14 years ago, the ethics board saw fit to assess fines against this entity. New Orleans East leadership. $6,000 in late fines because they apparently can't get these filings that Mr. Reiser had to submit. They apparently can't get theirs in on time. And Mr. Jarrett, we're going to give you the link for this document. We'll give you the link for the full article from which this was derived. But it says that Mr. Jarrett says that the fees are, quote, the result of a misunderstanding of the rules associated with campaign finance disclosure reporting and some reorganization challenges within our organization. Okay, you know, if you're going to be in this game, you need to obey the rules, okay? Now he's going to go and cry and plead, oh, let us off the hook on this $6,000. You know, it doesn't work that way, okay? If you're going to be in this game, you need to know the rules, and there's no excuse for not knowing them. And let me just say this. I pointed out to you the John Alario related graft, and that's what it is. You can call it what you want. When you're putting your daughter-in-law on the payroll to supervise Baton Rouge employees from your home in West Wego, we're talking about graft, okay? And beyond that, as you will know, in the most recent legislative session, there was a strong effort to try and cram 17 cents a gallon down your throat to fund highway construction. Like I said, we need highway construction. But the money does exist there, and I'm going to give you a direct link, okay? I'm going to give you a direct link to an outstanding article that was written by Kevin Boyd of the Hayride, all right? He itemizes in exacting detail approximately $40 million that was included in House Bill 2. That, for those of you who may not be familiar with what House Bill 2 is, House Bill 1 is the operating budget for the ongoing expenses of the state of Louisiana. House Bill 2 is what's called the Capital Outlays Bill. And it has to be passed in order to fund major construction projects. And you're going to see an itemized list on there. Take a look at it. Take a look at the sheer volume of pork that is located in West Wego, Louisiana, John Alario's home district, okay? So I would submit to you, I mean, John Alario is term limited, so he will not be in the state Senate after 2019, thank God. But I'm just here to tell you, John Alario doesn't do anything for nothing, and this is a direct indication that he'll probably have a big sway in Louisiana governmental operations even once he's no longer sitting as a state senator, because his only other option is to go back to the House. When term limits got in, he went from the House to the Senate to buy another 12 years. I don't see the man going back to the House, because there's no way in hell that the members over there are going to be willing to have him as Speaker of the House, and John Alario is a guy that if he can't be top dog, he's not interested, okay? But at any rate, all you have to do is look at that article by Kevin Boyd and see we have the ability to fund the construction needs of this state. The problem is we've had $600 million of our taxpayer funds diverted directly out of the Transportation Trust Fund to fund state police largesse. Graft. You've seen all the articles. I don't have to reiterate them to you. The payroll, the massive payroll fraud, the excursions to San Diego. Jim Mustang just reported on a similar one out to Orlando. Folks, this is why you're stuck in traffic, okay? This is why you're stuck in traffic. It's a matter of priorities. The political hog slop was more important to John Alario and to those who are buttering up to him, and that would include Neil Reiser. You don't need any further evidence to see the degree that he is buttering up to them. And there is a price to be paid. Trust me, there is a price to be paid for buttering up. All right, it will extract a toll down the road. As I said, none of this is done, oh, I just did that out of the goodness of my heart. You could have had the bridge in Baton Rouge with that $600 million, okay? Now, I want to just say one thing, and then I'm going to move on to who I am supporting for Louisiana State Treasurer. I've given you the reasons that Neil Reiser certainly will not be the candidate whom I'm supporting. I have the utmost of respect for the hayride. I just told you we're providing you a link for an article written by Kevin Boyd. Scott McKay is a fantastic individual. During this 17 cent a gallon attempted increase in our gasoline tax, he fought it very heavily in terms of articles that he put out. And in one of them, he even said that someone had offered him $10,000 if he just wouldn't publish any more articles and just shut up. And he wouldn't take it. And I think that speaks to his integrity and his dedication to conservative cause. Like I said, I don't know what we would do without the hayride, because there is no alternative to the just hardcore liberal. I don't even want to say the word that's coming to my brain with regard to the Advocate. The hayride fills an incredible need for those of us who are looking for a news source that's not going to give us what is clearly a highly liberal slant, particularly when it comes to fiscal related matters, because that's what the Advocate is. I'm sorry, I lay the truth bare. Scott McKay is good friends with Neil Reiser, and he's had to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Reiser, Senator Reiser, is actively courting the Democratic support in New Orleans. And we're going to give you a link for his article in that regard. And he says it's probably a good strategy. And I think Scott's having to put the best spin on this he can, because the hayride, as I said, when you accept advertising dollars, and the hayride has sponsored tables. I'm sorry, Neil Reiser has sponsored tables at the highest sponsorship level for hayride functions. You get between a rock and a hard place. And I know that Scott is putting the best spin he can on this whole development. But I'm just here to tell you, it's not good, okay? And I don't like having to say that, because I have the utmost of respect for Scott and his publication, and I know that he's just having to put the best spin that he can on this situation of Neil Reiser appealing to the Democratic machine, if you will, because I can also, in fact, I will give you a couple of photographs of recent fundraisers beyond just John Alario. You're going to see, now he's over in the distance, okay, up to the punt of the podium, obviously making a speech, so you're only getting a shot from the rear. But you'll also see Senator Dan Martini out there touting the campaign trail for Neil Reiser. Well, Dan Martini is nothing but a mouthpiece for John Alario. I don't think the man's ever had an original thought in his life. If John Alario doesn't approve you saying, "My name is Dan Martini," he'll shut his mouth and not even go so far as to say, "My name is Dan Martini." All right? But this whole crew, particularly Martini, they were all active supporters of John Bel Edwards. You're now seeing the dramatic cozying up that Neil Reiser is doing to this crew that supported John Bel Edwards. And I have no doubt whatsoever that Senator Alario voted for John Bel Edwards, which is fine. Everybody has a right to do what they want. But my point is that Neil Reiser, in buttering up to the Democratic vote in this instance, he's trying to make the runoff, and that's exactly what Scott is saying. But I'm just here to tell you there's a huge price to be paid for that. You're not going to pull this off and then not have the piper to pay, okay? It's just a simple fact. I don't know any other simple way to say it. And so I'm going to wrap this up in saying who I am supporting for state treasurer, because I guess either one of the other two major Republicans that are looking this would probably wonder, but I don't have anything critical to say about Angel Davis, one of the other candidates, one of the other Republican candidates for state treasurer. In fact, if you will look on that link that I provided you with regard to the Alario Lard, you will also see on there, there's a category for Jill Boudreaux. She was formerly at State Police, and they pulled another little scam here. State Police is atrocious. What is going on at State Police is just absolutely unbelievable. And the pig slop that is, the entity has completely lost any kind of credibility, and that's very unfortunate because we got an awful lot of very good troopers out there. And for the leadership that is going on in there, and I quite frankly, I don't believe you've had a lot of change in Colonel Reeves. It sure looks like an awful lot of the same type of slop that was going on under Edmondson is continuing under Colonel Reeves. But at any rate, if you look at the one right above, we got Diana Alario, there was Matthew, you have to forgive me, I can't pronounce that name, but anyway, this is Jill Boudreaux's son-in-law. But I want to focus on Jill Boudreaux right above. She was a deputy undersecretary, and in direct violation of the Civil Service rehire rules, she, quote, retired on April the 28th of 2010. She got I believe it was about a $46,000 incentive to take that retirement. That was, well, actually it was more. It was 50% of her $92,000 salary, plus another 300 hours of annual leave, for a combined total, I guess, of close to $60,000 she got it. Do you see why you don't have a bridge? Close to $60,000 as an incentive to take this, quote, retirement. And then they turned around and they rehired her the next day. Now, bear in mind, she retired, put that in quotes, at $92,000. She was rehired the next day at $118,600. So she had not only did she get a $60,000 lump sum payment, but she also got, actually I have the number there, $59,000. She also got a raise of $26,600 a year. And she remained on at DPS all the way through to the very beginning days of the Edwards administration, when he finally said, look, I really think you need to retire for good. And she did. But I said all that to say this. If you'll see highlighted there, Angel Davis actively opposed. She said, you're going to have to pay this back. She was not happy with it. She was Bobby Jindal's Commissioner of Administration. And I think that speaks very well of her. And like I said, I don't have anything critical to say about Angel Davis. I think that speaks very well of her. The money didn't get repaid, and Miss Davis left the Jindal administration, I think very wisely, because she probably saw very early on the same thing I saw early on as an appointee of Bobby Jindal's, whom he fired, and I wear that as a badge of honor. But I think she probably saw the true nature of Bobby Jindal and got on out of there before her own name got tarnished, because, you know, even though we're talking way back in 2010 when I got fired, many of us were starting to see exactly who Bobby Jindal is. Now, he was floating on 70% popularity at that point, and even had his aspirations that he would become the next president of the United States. Well, we all see where he is now. Sooner or later, the chickens come home to roost. So I want to make that clear. I don't have anything negative to say about Angel Davis. Nevertheless, I am supporting John Schroeder for Louisiana treasurer. And here's in a nutshell why. Now, first of all, I want to say one thing. I never even met John Schroeder until this past Thursday when I attended a function for young college Republicans. Even though I don't think I qualify as young anymore. But there were some there that were older than me, so I guess young is all a mindset. But I have looked at Representative Schroeder, well, former Representative Schroeder. He said, and I agree with him on this, he said he ought to be all in. He said, I want this job. I want this job. And so he went ahead and resigned his state representative position. He went all in. We're going to give you, and I want to make this clear, John Schroeder did not, this is not part of his campaign. He did not endorse this. This is me, Robert Burns, as part of Sound Off Louisiana, and telling you who I'm going to support. I was asked, so I'm telling you who I'm going to support. But we are going to provide a direct embedded video of former Representative Schroeder's, it's a little 5-minute commercial introducing him to you. I think you'll be quite impressed. But I've been impressed, number one, with the fact that Bobby Jindal kicked him off the committee the same way he did Cameron Henry. And Representative Schroeder said at the Young College Republicans that if he is elected treasurer, one of his number one top priorities, and I want to pause because I want this to sink in, one of his number one top priorities is to completely change the mechanism for comprising House Bill 2. That's the bill I told you about that's got all the Alario hog slop in it, okay? He said all of this takes place in back rooms, cigar smoke. It's all done in secret, and it's nothing but buying votes. Now, he said all of that. I may have changed a word or two, but that's pretty close to what he said. He knows. And that is exactly what's going on. And he wants to put complete and total transparency on that process to totally change the mechanism by which House Bill 2 is crafted and passed. I think you can see why John Alario would not like that. I think you can see where John Bell Edwards would not like that, because it takes away their ability to procure votes through those backroom deals that have resulted in the kind of slop that is outlined on Kevin Boyd's article, which is why you're stuck in that traffic. It's a matter of not having your priorities correct. Now, John Schroeder has said that, look, if you're looking for someone who's going to just fit in with the in crowd, he's not it. And I kind of believe he's not. I mean, Jindal yanked him from the committee because he started to say, look, we're going to have problems down the road from doing what you're doing. Well, guess what? We've got problems. So I think one candidate's out. I mean, there's no way I would vote for Neil Reiser. And I think I've told you why. You may agree with me, you may disagree. I'm believing you probably may agree if you are conservative fiscal as I am, because the alliances he is making now is not going to permit him to be a fiscal conservative when he gets in that office. But I am envisioning a dream scenario in which we have John Kennedy as governor. Remember, John Kennedy tried quite a few initiatives on his own. They didn't get real far as treasurer. But can you imagine having John Kennedy as governor and John Schroeder, John and John, as the treasurer? I believe we'll have the real potential to make significant changes in this state for the betterment and make at least a dent, hopefully a huge dent, in the kind of lard slop that this state has been so accustomed to under John Alario. I want to thank you for having tuned into this video. I hope that, I know the treasurer race is not something that most people pay much attention to. They're counting on very low voter participation. The strategy here for Reiser is very simple. They're counting on voter turnout to be in the teens across the state, but to be 45–50% in New Orleans because of the mayoral election going on down there. And he's appealing to that vote in the hope that he can make the runoff against the one Democratic governor whose last name also happens to be Edwards, but because the Democratic Party won't even support anybody. So, I mean, they haven't endorsed, they have a candidate, but they won't even endorse him. So I know what Reiser's strategy is. He wants to peel off enough of those votes that would go with him, even though, in theory, Neil Reiser is not even remotely aligned with, in theory, with what these folks would represent. But he's clearly pandering, okay? He is pandering. There is no other way to describe it. And I'm telling you, there's going to be a price to be paid for pandering, all right? I'm believing that they're going to be wrong. I'm believing that we will have a high conservative vote turnout across this state. And if you share my belief and philosophy in that regard, I would urge you to join me in supporting John Schroeder for Louisiana Treasurer. Thank you so much. I thank you for the time you've taken to see this video, and we look forward to bringing you our next Sound Off Louisiana feature in the very near future. Thank you once again.